Have you ever wanted to save a life? Have you ever wanted to fight disease on the front lines of healthcare? Have you ever wanted to make a ton of money but also have a ton of student loans to pay back while also earning slightly above minimum wage, working 80 hours a week for 3 to 7 years of your adult life? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you should consider becoming a doctor. Not a doctorate, not an underwater basket weaving PhD, a physician, a clinician, just doctor. No asterisks needed. And yeah, sure, maybe you have tiger parents like mine who drilled into you the idea of being a doctor since you were like 5 years old, but I think this is the coolest job on the planet. As an internal medicine physician and a hospitalist, I love doing what I do. I love turning someone around from death's door to getting up and out of a hospital bed and back home to their family. I'm proud to be a doctor. If you're familiar with the concept of ikigai, being a doctor slaps, like covers the whole thing, hits the middle, 10 out of 10 every time. The job can be tough, the training is long, and the loans are a constant anvil over your head, but I could never ever see myself doing anything else for a job. In this video, I'm going to describe what the journey is like to get to med school and how you can prepare yourself best for it. My credentials: I'm a 30-year-old US MD who did 4 years of university, matriculated in 2018, graduated in 2022, and went on to internal medicine residency. I graduated from that in 2025, and I'm currently practicing as a hospitalist in 2026. My ideas about this process are based off of my own experience, both as an applicant and a reviewer. My previous involvement includes being on the student admissions board at my med school, where I directly read applications, interviewed candidates, and gave input with our Office of Admissions. Following my M3 year, I also did private consulting work back home, and I worked one-on-one with applicants, reviewing essays and helping them prepare for interviews at various schools. One big caveat with this video, I will say though, I am an American. I only know how the process works in America. I did residency with doctors from the world over, from Germany to South Africa, from Pakistan to Poland, and if those middle of the night float 4 a.m. rants taught me anything, it's that the medical school experience is very, very different in each country. Aside from the Americans, I know I have a sizable Filipino, Indonesian, and Indian audience, and I'm just sorry I can't really help you all. So if you're watching this video, you are ideally an upperclassman in high school or starting out in your first years in college. But if you're older and looking for advice, then you might be onto something too. Nowadays, the average age of a first-year med student is 24 to 25. Assuming most people graduate high school at 18 and college at 22, then gap years or career changers are actually more common than most people think. Personally, I went straight through school and I low-key kind of regretted it. Many people travel, broaden their horizons, gain more life experience, or just start working in medicine or even another field. By the time you get into med school, you're pretty much locked in for the next 7 years at minimum. So there's a lot in life that can just pass you by. I graduated residency last year, right? Moved in with my girlfriend and just hanging out with a bunch of old friends again. And it's like, what do you mean you guys are married? What do you mean you own a house? Oh my God, you've had a whole 8-year career in tech this whole time. And besides, once you're in residency and actually practicing medicine for the first time, it becomes extremely obvious who's been spoiled by school only and who's actually held a job in the real world before. And if you're older than 25, then that's totally fine too. I went to med school and did residency with guys in their 40s, and their journeys were far from uncommon. One of them just turned 48 by the time we finished residency. If becoming a doctor is something that you truly want, then you owe it to yourself to try, no matter how old you are. Realistically though, pursuing this job just isn't for everyone. Aside from the significant time investment, there are extremely high financial barriers to entry that not everyone can afford. The average medical school tuition is $60,000 a year. I went to a private medical school and my total COA was almost $80,000 a year. For the record, I'm a spoiled brat. I'm an only child and my parents paid my rent during med school and residency, and I had a half-ride scholarship for med school, and I still took out $110,000 in federal student loans. Unless you're a 1%er with double doctor parents, taking out loans is basically the norm. The average medical school debt for a new graduate is just about $210,000, and this isn't even accounting for possible undergraduate loan debt too. In the US, the full journey of medical training starts with 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of med school, 3 to 7 years of residency depending on specialty, and an optional 1 to 3 years of fellowship for those planning to subspecialize within their field. After finishing high school, this means that the full path can take anywhere from 11 to 18 years before you're actually making that doctor money. Unlike things like nursing or a PhD program, there really isn't any point where you can pivot out partway through if you feel like the whole thing isn't working out. There's no ability to get a master's or a certification instead of the full MD. You can't elect to get less training to get a limited license. And aside from significant emergencies, it's very difficult to pause your training and pick it back up later. You really do need to see the full decade or two through in order to have any real career prospects. Otherwise, you're putting yourself in a position where you can't pay back any of your loans. So you should know what you're getting into and determine if you're really serious about it. And hopefully this video can help you make that decision. So let's start from from the beginning, whether you're in high school or just getting curious about the job for the first time. I think the most important thing you can do for yourself at this point is to understand what a doctor is and what a doctor isn't. We aren't nurses, we aren't physical therapists, we practice medicine in a way that's unique to our job description and lead the team, accepting full responsibility for everything along the way. And you should know what that entails before you decide if this is right for you. TV and movies only represent the job so well, and let's be real, there's a lot that they get wrong. The best thing that you can do at this time is to shadow a doctor yourself and see what it's really like. And it's not enough to just highlight the cool parts of the day. You should really understand what the routine is like and if you can seriously see yourself doing something like this in the future. You don't need to go crazy and observe surgeries or shadow the most cutting-edge oncology trials. Just ask your primary doctor or your family doctor or your aunt's OB-GYN, whatever, and just see if you can tag along for an afternoon or a week in the summer. Work on establishing a relationship with them that you can build upon later. I cannot stress enough how important this is. All right, so you think you have a good idea about what the job entails. How can you prepare yourself best in university to give yourself the best shot? Well, for starters, if you're actually dead set on medicine, then you should be applying to a combined BS-MD program, which exists at many schools across the country, like George Washington University, Baylor, Drexel, and UConn, to name a few. They are essentially a 3-year undergrad experience combined with the full 4-year medical school run. These programs are tough to get into, on top of making this choice when you're like 17, but they do allow you to take a few shortcuts like skip the MCAT or have a guaranteed acceptance as long as you maintain a minimum GPA. You're also saving a whole year of tuition, not worrying about interviews or moving to a new school in a different state. I didn't go to one of these programs, but I had classmates and friends who did, and they're definitely an attractive option for some people. For the rest of us, college is still college. And you probably know that you're going to have to lock in and stay at the top of your class if you even want to begin to hope that a medical school admissions committee will extend you an interview invite. You might fall in with that toxic pre-med crowd, just trying to outdo one another with volunteer hours, research labs, or time spent in the library. But let me be the first one to tell you that college is still college. It's a time to broaden your horizons, explore stuff that you never thought you would be interested in before, meet new people, go explore your city, join Greek life, I don't care. Now is the time to do stuff, and you'll never have a time in your life like this ever again. And what I really mean by this is do not fall into the classic pre-med trap. Do not major in something like biology or biochem or neuroscience just because you think it'll help you get into medical school. The classes are hard, the material is esoteric, and in reality, you will use maybe 10% of that as relevant information in med school. Many majors that people assume are good for pre-med in university are chock full of things that you will never actually use in medicine and are actually more geared towards academia and applying for PhD study. For example, I was a chemistry major. All of my courses after my sophomore year were completely useless for med school. I took PChem. When is the last time I ever used a Hamiltonian in my clinical practice? Why do I even need to know what a Hamiltonian is anymore? What the hell is an eigenvalue? Why do I know so much about semiconductors? Have you seen organometallic chemistry? Have you seen a ferrocene? That is like spaceships. Here's the tea. As a pre-med student, the only things you need to apply to medical school are the MCAT and the following courses: 1 year of general biology with lab, 1 year of general chemistry with lab, 1 year of general physics with lab, 1 year of organic chemistry with lab, and 1 semester of biochemistry. That's it. Many medical schools recommend a psychology, sociology, and human physiology class as well, since this material is also represented on the MCAT, but they're not technically required. Other than those 5 classes and the standardized tests, I do not care what you decide to major in. Please find something that interests you. Whether it's business, linguistics, or the arts, your education in college outside of the pre-med bubble will only serve to enrich your experiences in the future. If you know saiken lore from my debut stream, then you know I was actually a double major in college. And alongside chemistry, I also have a degree in theater studies with a concentration in dramaturgy. I was a theater kid growing up, and formally studying the theater from an academic perspective and not just acting really gave me an appreciation of the art that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Plus, it gave me plenty to talk about on the interview trail and served as a unique background for the many experiences that ultimately brought me personally to study medicine. Besides good grades, things like a humanities major will take you very far in the application cycle. Remember, over 100,000 students apply to medical school each year, and only about a quarter of those actually get into one. Your goal is to stand out on an application, and what will help you do that are your extracurriculars, research, volunteering, shadowing, and the MCAT. So let's break those down. For your extracurriculars, you should be comfortable writing about and speaking about literally anything and everything. Your barista job, your sorority life, running your school's esports club. Literally anything that you do in college can translate into real-world skills and development that can speak to your strengths as a person. For this section, it's not the amount of extracurriculars that matter, but the depth of what you did and what you learned from it. Don't lie, but glaze yourself heavy and never sell yourself short. Schools love to hear more about your meaningful involvements in a way that can show off the unique experiences that make you, you. In my mind, I group volunteering, shadowing, and research together. And this will be surprising to some people, but when I reviewed applications, I personally felt these to be more like a checkbox category than anything. There is so much power creep amongst these three, it's almost a meme amongst pre-med students. The amount of quote research, unquote, that's out there done by pre-meds and even med students now applying to residency is probably a joke to real academics, and honestly, we kind of deserve it, but that's a mess of a story for another day. Again, it all comes down to how you're going to write about these things on your application. What's the point of over 2,000 hours of volunteer work if all you did was hang out at a soup kitchen and play on your phone? What's the point of slaving away in a wet lab to brag about being on a paper if you're the 6th author or just an acknowledgement? I think it's extremely important to have at least one of these three be a highlight on your application. Maybe it's just a literature review, but having a first authored paper that you can publish and contribute to your lab is a huge boon to your application and speaks to your commitment and ability to get things done. Or a letter of recommendation written by that doctor that you shadowed over the past 4 years. Hey, remember when I talked about that, And how much that person has watched you mature and trusts you to succeed in medicine. A few small pearls like these really stand out amongst the slop and help you be memorable in the eyes of an admissions committee. Now, let's get to the MCAT. Just like the SAT or ACT, it's a standardized test you just gotta take in order to show schools that you're capable of doing well academically. Unlike those tests, though, you will need to pull a few months beforehand to do some dedicated study with question banks and practice tests to have the best chance of succeeding. This isn't a super in-depth MCAT analysis talk, but long story short, it's a 7-hour test administered at a computer testing center divided into 4 parts: critical reading, just like in high school, chem phys, biochem, and psych sociology. Each section's graded from 118 to 132 for a total score of 472 to 528. If you plan on going to med school right after college, you would be applying the summer before your senior year, which means you should aim to take the MCAT sometime during the winter to spring of your junior year. Since the med school prerequisite courses are all represented on this exam, try to get them finished before the second semester of your junior year at the latest. And finally, with the MCAT out of the way, let's get to the topic of stats. Now, please remember, this is all based on my own experience as a reviewer, and while I'd like to think myself better than student Dr. Net or r/medical school, please know that this is not a hard recommendation by any means. As study resources get more comprehensive and pre-med creep has blown up since the pandemic, this process has only gotten more competitive. So the 3 biggest numbers the applicant is evaluated on are the MCAT score, CGPA, and SGPA. The CGPA is a cumulative GPA. It's the final total GPA that's reported on the transcript. The SGPA is the science GPA, and this is calculated from any BCPM courses on the transcript. BCPM standing for biology, chemistry, physics, and mathematics, but it's really an umbrella term for any science STEM courses, so grades from classes like psychology, sociology, physiology, etc. also count towards this one too. And yes, the reality is that many people's SGPA will be lower than the CGPA, and that's okay. From my experience, I consider a CGPA greater than 3.8, SGPA greater than 3.6, and MCAT greater than 512, 85th percentile, to be safe scores. I believe that these are enough to keep an applicant competitive for MD schools and not evaluated as an underperforming or red flag sort of candidate. Any semi-decent person with these scores, a complete application, and a not psychopathic personal statement should be able to secure multiple interview invites easily. And assuming they don't have a similarly hypothetically psychopathic interview day, multiple acceptances. Sure, it's probably not enough for Harvard or Yale, but there are hundreds of medical schools across the country, and these numbers give you the best chance for that. On the other hand, I consider a CGPA less than 3.5, SGPA less than 3.2, or an MCAT less than 506, 67th percentile, demonstrative of real deficiencies and at a legitimate risk of being screened out from the application pile. Maybe a high SGPA can save one from low scores in the other two, but as with the others, I would expect it to be explained somewhere on the application, and at that point, the applicant's already starting off on the back foot. One could elect to retake the MCAT if that was where the biggest outlier was, or maybe do a post-bac after graduation to take some extra science courses to boost up their SGPA. GPA. This applicant might have better chances applying to DO schools instead of MD, or applying to Caribbean MD schools. But this video is getting long enough, and I think I'll save these backup plans and career changers for a part 2 if people are interested. Well, if you made it this far, I think it's only fair that I reveal my own stats too. So personally, between my theater major and my chemistry major, I had a 3.6 CGPA, 3.3 SGPA, and a 510 MCAT, which was 80th percentile. So I had straight A's in my theater classes, which boosted the hell out of my CGPA, but a pretty below average SGPA from getting wrecked in my chem major, and a decent but not stellar MCAT score. I chose not to retake the MCAT over the summer, and I sent in my applications. So as you can imagine, during my senior year, I only had like 4 interview invites from the 50 plus schools that I applied to, and I was stressing. But I interviewed strongly, and I was able to share my story and communicate my passion for medicine. Admissions committees recognized that I wasn't just my numbers, and my efforts were rewarded with acceptances. I matriculated the following year, and the rest is history. This is a ridiculously long and complicated process just to get to the very tip of the iceberg, but as any past or present medical student will tell you, it only takes one.